Hi and welcome to Dirtbike's Dual Sport video series. Today we've got the 2020 Honda CRF450L. This bike made a big splash when it came out a year ago, and we're happy to have it back. However, it's completely unchanged. This is what Honda does. Every time they come out with a new model in this category, it kind of stays the same and runs its course. If you look at the CRF450L, that bike has been unchanged for about 20 years. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we were really impressed with this bike when it came out last year. It is based, of course, on the CRF450R motocross bike, but very loosely. If you look at all the individual parts, they have been modified in some way or another. The suspension is full Showa, just like the motocross bike. It's much softer, of course, but the main difference is going to be the DOT and EPA certification that this bike has. It is super quiet and super clean. On the trail, that might not mean a whole lot to most of us. Unless you're like me, you really like a quiet bike, and the bike is super quiet. There are plastic casings around the engine that kind of muffle engine noise, as well as a muffler that you can barely hear running from 20 feet away. The bike comes with IRC street-oriented tires. Half of that is for noise, so it can pass the drive-by sound test, and half is just so it performs well on the street. For our purposes, we change tires. We put on STI Tech 2 tires, which are DOT knobbies. They are full knobbies though, and very aggressive in the dirt. That changes the bike into a completely different animal. On the trail, the bike is crisp off the bottom, and it handles pretty much like a CRF450R. It's very lively, very quick steering. It is, however, much heavier than the motocross version or even the trail-oriented CRF450X. On our scale, without fuel, the bike weighs 278 pounds. That's a little hefty. You can see where a lot of the weight is. The tail section is reinforced around the license plate. There are heat shields and reinforcement everywhere on this bike. It is very difficult to take the weight off. We know because we've tried. You can go down that road of titanium this, titanium that, but in the end, the bike handles its weight fairly well. The real star of the show is the motor. It makes a ton of low-end power. It's very snappy off the bottom, very crisp. As you climb up in the revs, naturally it tapers off a little bit. It is a very quiet motorcycle, and you wouldn't expect it to run like a motocrosser. How does it compare to the other bikes in the dual sport category? It's very good until you get to very tight trails, very physical extreme stuff. That weight has to show up somewhere. Even though the suspension is excellent, it's still a lot of bike to handle. Down low, the bike frequently stalls unless you really stay on top of the clutch and the gas. We turned up the idle, that cures that a little bit, but you have to be a little careful nonetheless. Overall, we would say this bike leans a little bit more towards the street than some of the other dual sport bikes like the KTM and the Husky. One thing that the Honda has over KTM, Husqvarna, and Beta is the fact that all the dual sport equipment is kind of a notch higher. The blinkers, very durable, the headlight, super powerful, and everything is bolted on well. We don't always see that with some of the more dirt-oriented dual sport bikes. We have seen project bikes that are all out. If you check back an issue of Dirtbike, you'll see an IMS CRF450L that was every bit as good as a Husky or a KTM in any environment. So basically, a year later, we know a lot about this bike. We still love it as much as ever. It's a very pricey motorcycle, $10,399, slightly cheaper than the KTM and Husky, still not an inexpensive bike. Overall though, it is a quality motorcycle with a ton of potential. So check back for a dual sport shootout coming up in the near future. And as always, check out dirtbikemagazine.com for all the latest in off-road information and features.